Hello and welcome to the Pig and Whistle Tales from Azeroth. As always, here at the Pig and Whistle Inn in Stormwind, I go through a variety of subjects with regards to World of Warcraft. I grab a bottle or a pint, sit back and enjoy. This week we'll obviously be going to... Oh, no, hold up. Wrong page. I'm looking at the last week's podcast, the WoW News one, and, everything in my notes is a bit jumbled, so we're going to be going over the Rate My Dungeon series. I was about to say WoW News, but that'll be in a couple of weeks, I would imagine, after some more info on 10.1 comes out. But yeah, we're going over the Rate My Dungeon series, and we're going to be looking at Shadowlabs as well as Slave Pens from Burning Crusade. We're going to look at the heroic version mostly, but for Shadowlabs, because it is one of the higher end or higher level normal dungeons in Burning Crusade, we can also look at that variation as well, and just where these sort of rank in a... like how decent they are to do gear-wise, how their structure is, if they're any fun at all. That's kind of the main point. If they're fun, if they're enjoyable, something to actually do. So let's get into Shadowlabs first. Shadowlabs is located in... I was going to say Sethic Halls, but Sethic Halls is its own dungeon. In Arkandoon, in the bottom left of Terrakar Forest. Excuse me. It's a 4-boss dungeon. This is both heroic and normal. It's very linear, but the thing is about it, it's not very linear because you have to clear a lot of trash in these big rooms. Because if you don't clear the trash in the big rooms, essentially when you pull the boss, all of it will start chasing you. And yeah, you will die in that instance. If you've not got a very good, competent, I want to say raid group, but dungeon group that's in comms and stuff, you have a very high chance of dying, essentially. So it is linear, but at the same time, it is very open, and you can do certain strats to pull more mobs, or you can just pull one pack at a time, that kind of thing. The loot that you get in there is actually very decent. It's for the normal mode, it's very, very good because you can get stuff like Blade of Twisted Horrors. You can get the polearm for like hunters and stuff, which is your best in slot, pre-raid best in slot. You can get some tier pieces. What is it, tier 4? No, tier 3.5, I would imagine, something like that. It's stuff like the Beast Lord set for hunters, etc. So there is actually some very decent loot in here. Heroic-wise, you can get a couple good pieces, but primarily it's one of the tougher heroic dungeons due to the fact that the trash and the bosses are quite obnoxious. The bosses, especially, because one has a fear, the very first one. The second one mind controls everyone and makes them start attacking each other. So if you're unlucky with RNG, all of the mind control people will just attack one person, which isn't great, and it will ultimately kill them. So if you're unlucky and that happens to you, like wipe after wipe, it's one of them things, which I have seen before, by the way. But again, the sort of difficulty of it is one of the tougher dungeons, kind of like Sethic Halls, where everything just hits really chonky in Sethic Halls. Even to the point where level 80s in WoW Wrath Classic at the moment still get like killed by these mobs in Sethic Halls. But yeah, it's very decent loot, very good loot. You definitely need to run it a few times, especially if you need the reputation for Lower City, because that can give you weapons that are very good for boomkins, for healers, for anything that requires a mace, essentially, a one-handed mace. So, you can get some very decent loot out of doing Shadowlabs heroic and normal. Obviously, there was no revamp, like all of the other TBC dungeons in Cataclysm. There was no revamp for any of them. Overall, Shadowlabs, I spent a lot of time in here as my druid because I wanted the mace. As my druid was my ult, so it was the easiest to sort of acquire at the time. I would give it a good 7 out of 10. I enjoyed the packs. There were certain dungeon groups that made it a bit easier, a bit more fun. But essentially, yeah, it's very linear, but at the same time, it feels very open. You could do a lot with it because some groups would pull a few packs at a time and you could just AoE them down. Others, you'd pull one pack at a time and it would be a lot slower. So it can vary your run to run basis on how much you enjoy it, but essentially I would say that it is a very good dungeon, especially if you are a AoE class, because a lot of the packs in there have about 5 to 6 mobs in them, towards like the back end of the what is it, dungeon, that's it. Now Slave Pens. Slave Pens is a 3 boss dungeon, both heroic and normal. Heroic is the main one because the last boss in Slave Pens can drop a very good caster trinket, and that's all anyone wanted. There were some good like legs and stuff for physical damage, like rogues and warriors. I think they were leather, so yeah, the leather warrior is back. But essentially, yeah, the Slave Pens, you only wanted the last boss loot. You didn't want anything else. But in terms of difficulty, there was things that really hit hard in there, such as the crabs. The crabs at like the start, in the middle, and towards the end hit really hard, so you actually had to tank them in a specific way. You would either kite them as a paladin, or you would say shield block for 10 seconds because they're just not hitting you as a warrior, that kind of thing. As a warrior, it was a lot tougher though because you don't have as much AoE threat and stuff like that. So primarily paladin was the go-to tank in TBC. So you had to do this kiting strat. And a little story about this, actually. I was tanking on my paladin in Slave Pens once, and we had a hunter. So whenever we came up against these crab pecks, I asked, oh, can you put down a slow trap so I can kite? And he didn't do it the first pack, so I'm like, okay, maybe he just didn't see. So the next pack, it's the next crab pack, it's like, oh, can you put down a slow trap, please, so that I can kite them? And he's like, what's that? And I'm like, what? I visibly like shook my head, when you close your eyes and like try and shake that out of your brain. It's like, what? Wait, what did you just say? And he was like, yeah, what's slow trap? I don't have that. I haven't learned that. And it's like, don't you learn that at level 30 or something? And he's like, probably, but like, I only train beast stuff. This is like basically what he says. I only train beast stuff. So throughout the dungeon, we were looking at his details, his damage, and he had only ever hit stuff using kill command and pet abilities. He didn't even learn multi-shot, and that's at like level 20. I don't know. He had no other spells. He had arcane shot from about level 6. He was using rank 1 of everything. He was using so little abilities, it was unreal. And his damage was so bad. It was so bad. And yet, for a class in TBC, by the way, that is a 1-button class, he was still doing very bad damage. And that comes from your pet, that 1 button as well. So, it is what it is. But essentially, he was dead weight. He didn't offer anything in terms of buffs. He didn't offer anything in terms of, like, utility, traps, or misdirect, or even anything else. He was literally a kill command bot. And the thing is, he was leveled without any spells. He leveled without kill command for about 67 levels or whatever it is. You get it at like level 68. It was something very high in TBC, I believe. So, like, it's absolutely insane. But yeah, Slave Pens runs were the worst because you'd always want to skip. And the thing is, with skipping, you had to do a couple jumps. And these couple jumps involved very subtle movements or jumping at the right time. There was always a couple people that failed, even 1 or 2. I think I did like 20 to 30 Slave Pens runs for my mage to get the trinket. And we did the skip about 20 times. We'll say 20 times out of 20. One time is when everyone made the jump. There was always someone that missed. And if you missed, you simply had to just drown yourself in the water there and then get rezzed where everyone else had jumped to. So it was just waiting for about a minute and a half, doing nothing, twiddling your thumbs kind of thing. Yeah, it wasn't fun. It wasn't fun, Slave Pens, purely on the basis that people didn't understand it or weren't capable of doing the dungeon, essentially. So it brings it down a bit, rating-wise, to about a 6 out of 10, purely on the basis that people didn't understand it. I think it could have been better because this was a dungeon that you could skip very effectively as well. but people just didn't understand how to or why and stuff like that. It is what it is. It is a very open dungeon as well, which gave it a very good feel, like you aren't being corralled almost into a certain bottleneck, that kind of thing. But that is it for this episode. Thank you all very much for listening. Do check out the Patreon as well as Twitch, YouTube, constant stuff happening over there. When this goes live, I will be streaming in an hour, so at 7 GMT for the WoW Classic Raid, so you're more than welcome to join over there and just say hi, pop in. But thank you all very much for listening, as always, and go with Valor, friend. Goodbye all.